You can do everything right and still lose her. Not because you failed her, because you misunderstood what she was actually loyal to. This is the part that most men never get a clear answer on. Not because the answer is complicated, but because the framework most men are operating from points them in the wrong direction entirely. When a relationship drifts, when warmth fades, when a woman who once seemed certain becomes distant without any clear reason, the instinct is to look at what you did or did not do, to review the record, to add up the effort and wonder where the math went wrong. But loyalty in a woman does not follow effort. It does not follow provision, consistency, or the accumulation of good behavior over time. It follows something else, something specific, something that most men have never had named for them clearly. There is one thing that female loyalty actually responds to. One interior feeling that either exists in a relationship or does not. And no amount of doing, however sincere, however sustained, can manufacture it when it is absent. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what that thing is, why everything else falls short of it, and what it actually looks like to build it. Most men, when they sense a relationship beginning to drift, do more. They plan more, they give more, they try harder. And the more they do, the more confused they become, because none of it seems to be landing the way they expected. Think back to a relationship where you were genuinely trying, where you were showing up, being reliable, doing the things you thought a good partner does. And yet something in her was still withdrawing, still becoming slightly less available, slightly less warm, slightly harder to reach. And you could not identify a single thing you had done wrong, because you had not done anything wrong. You had simply been operating from a misunderstanding so fundamental that more effort could not correct it. Here is what that misunderstanding is. Most men have been taught, implicitly or explicitly, that value is demonstrated through action. That what you do for a woman, how you provide, how you protect, how you show up in practical and visible ways, is what earns her continued loyalty. This is not a cynical belief. It is actually a reasonable extension of how men tend to experience their own loyalty. When a man is loyal, it is often because someone has consistently demonstrated reliability, contribution, follow-through. He is loyal to what he can observe and verify. Women experience loyalty differently. Not because women are irrational, they are not, but because the internal mechanism that generates loyalty in a woman is connected to a different set of inputs entirely. Behavioral researchers have consistently observed that female attachment and commitment are more strongly predicted by emotional state than by behavioral track record. In plain terms, what a woman feels when she is with you matters more to her long-term loyalty than what you do for her. Gratitude and loyalty are not the same thing. A woman can be genuinely grateful for everything you have done, can acknowledge it, can appreciate it fully, and still find herself emotionally drifting from you. Not because she is ungrateful, because gratitude and loyalty are two separate responses generated by two separate experiences. Gratitude follows what you do. Loyalty follows how she feels. When a man keeps doing more and watching loyalty erode anyway, it is because he is feeding the wrong mechanism. He is building gratitude in a woman who needed something else entirely. And the distance between those two things is where most long-term relationships quietly break down. So if effort alone cannot produce loyalty, and the evidence that it cannot is everywhere once you start looking, then the question becomes what loyalty is actually responding to. And to answer that, we need to look at something most men have never been taught to think about. Loyalty in a woman is not a decision she makes after reviewing what a man has done for her. It is a feeling she has, or does not have, and the decision, when it comes, is almost always just confirming what the feeling already decided. This requires a moment to sit with, because it runs against the way most men are taught to think about relationships. We tend to believe that loyalty is chosen, that it is an act of will, a commitment maintained through discipline and decision. And for men, It often does work something like that. But female loyalty operates closer to the way trust operates in the nervous system. It is not argued into existence. It is felt into existence. Or it is not felt at all. The feeling that female loyalty follows has a specific name in psychological literature: emotional safety. Not physical safety. Most men understand that instinctively. And not financial security, though that is what many men default to providing. Emotional safety is something quieter and more interior than either of those things. It is the specific experience of being in the presence of someone who does not require you to manage yourself. Let me be more precise about what that means, because vague definitions are not useful here. A woman who feels emotionally safe with a man is a woman who can be uncertain in front of him without worrying he will interpret her uncertainty as weakness. She can be contradictory without worrying he will use it against her. She can express something dark or unresolved or uncomfortable without bracing for judgment or dismissal. She can be unfinished, not performing competence or composure, and feel that his regard for her does not depend on the performance. This feeling, when it is genuinely present, produces something that no amount of flowers, planning, or financial provision can replicate. Loyalty follows this feeling the way water follows gravity, not as a choice, not as a conscious reward for good behavior, as an automatic response to a specific interior state. When a woman consistently feels that kind of safety with a man, the safety of being fully herself without cost, her loyalty does not need to be maintained. It simply exists. It is the natural condition of someone who has found something rare and knows it. Of course, this does not mean emotional safety is the only thing that matters in a relationship. Reliability, shared values, practical compatibility, these things are real and they matter. But they are not what loyalty follows. They are what stability follows. The two are related but not identical, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes a man can make. That feeling has a name, and understanding it changes everything. But before I give it to you, there is something important about how most men accidentally destroy it without ever knowing they are doing so. Here is the part that is difficult to hear, and I want to say it carefully, because it is not about blame. Most men who lose a woman's loyalty were not failing to try. They were trying very hard at exactly the wrong things. Remember what I told you at the very start of this video, that there is one thing female loyalty actually follows, and that most of what men do, however genuine, cannot produce it. We are now at the layer of the conversation where that becomes most personal. Because the behaviors that undermine emotional safety are not obviously destructive. They do not look like failure from the outside. They often look like strength. The first pattern is emotional unavailability, that presents as reliability. This is the man who is always there in the practical sense. He shows up, he handles things, he is consistent and dependable, but who is not accessible emotionally. When something difficult is happening in his own interior life, he goes quiet. He manages rather than shares. He projects steadiness in a way that makes him feel more like a structure than a person. A woman in this dynamic gradually stops bringing him her real self, because his real self is not available to receive it. The access becomes one-directional, and over time, the emotional safety erodes. Not because he did anything wrong, but because the connection required two people present and only one showed up. The second pattern is what you might call transactional presence. This is the man who is engaged when things are going well, when the relationship is rewarding, when she is appreciative, when the dynamic feels reciprocal, but who subtly withdraws when things feel unbalanced or difficult. She begins to sense, even if she cannot articulate it, that his presence is conditional, that he is here for the version of the relationship that works, not for her specifically. And a woman cannot feel emotionally safe with someone whose presence she cannot fully trust. The third pattern is emotional inconsistency, being warm and open during good stretches, then closed and distant during stress or conflict. She never knows which version of you she is walking into. And when a person does not know what emotional environment they are entering, the nervous system begins to brace. Bracing is the opposite of safety. A woman who is bracing around a man cannot be loyal to him in the way that actually holds, because her energy is going into self-protection, not connection. Now, you might be thinking, I recognize one of these in myself, and it is not intentional. And that is exactly right. These patterns are not malicious. They are almost always the result of how men are taught to relate to their own emotional lives. The correction is not complicated, but it requires understanding what you are actually building toward, and that is what the next part is about. So if effort alone cannot produce loyalty, and these patterns actively destroy the one thing that does, then the question becomes, what is that one thing, and what does building it actually look like? The one thing a woman's loyalty follows is not the man who does the most for her. It is the man who makes her feel the most real, the most fully herself, when she is with him. And those are two entirely different men. The term I want to give you for this is emotional resonance, and I want to explain exactly what it means, because the word sounds abstract and the reality of it is anything but. Emotional resonance is not romance. It is not sensitivity in the conventional sense, and it is not about being emotionally expressive in a way that does not come naturally to you. It is something more specific and more achievable than any of those things. Emotional resonance is what happens when a woman finishes a sentence and feels that the person across from her actually received what she said. Not just the words, but what was underneath the words. When she expresses something uncertain or contradictory, and is met not with a solution or a reassurance, but with genuine acknowledgement that the thing she expressed is real and worth sitting with. When she is in a difficult mood and does not have to explain or justify it to avoid making the interaction harder. When she says something she has never said out loud before, and the response she gets makes her feel that saying it was safe. These are not grand moments. They are small ones. A conversation where you reflect back something she said in a way that shows you heard the layer beneath the surface. A moment when she is working through something internally and you stay present without trying to fix it. An interaction where she contradicts herself and you do not hold it against her. Where you simply let her be in the process of figuring something out, without it becoming a problem to solve. That quality of presence, consistent, uncharged, genuinely receptive, is what creates emotional resonance over time. And here is what makes this the most important thing in this entire video. Emotional resonance cannot be performed. You cannot produce it by deciding to say the right things at the right moments. It is not a technique. It is the result of a man who has enough access to his own interior life to actually be present in someone else's. Which is why it is rare. And why, when a woman finds it, her loyalty to it is not something she has to work to maintain. Psychologists sometimes describe this through the concept of attunement. The experience of having one's emotional state recognized and met by another person without distortion or deflection. Research on attachment consistently shows that attunement is the single strongest predictor of felt security in close relationships. In plain terms, nothing bonds a woman to a man the way being genuinely understood does. Not what he provides, not how he looks, not even how he treats her in the obvious sense. Being understood, at the level where she does not have to translate herself into language he can tolerate, is what loyalty actually follows. This is the one thing. Not a category of behaviors. Not a set of actions to add to a list. One feeling created by one quality of presence that either exists in an interaction or does not. Understanding this is one thing. But there is a specific reason why most men, even men who intellectually grasp what emotional resonance means, still fail to create it consistently. And that reason is worth spending a moment on before we reach the end. When men first understand what emotional resonance actually is, the immediate response is often, "But how do I produce that?" And that question, while completely understandable, is itself part of the problem. The instinct to produce a result, to locate the correct behavior and execute it, is precisely the orientation that makes emotional resonance impossible. Because resonance requires that you are actually present in the moment you are in, not managing it from a slight distance while monitoring whether it is working. The moment you are watching yourself for effectiveness, you have stepped out of genuine presence and into performance. And a woman can feel that shift immediately, even when she cannot name it. This does not mean emotional resonance is passive. It is not about withdrawing effort or becoming indifferent. It is about a specific redirection of attention, from what you should do to what is actually happening right now. From outcome management to genuine inhabitation of the moment. What this looks like in practice is quieter than most men expect. It is being in a conversation with her and noticing, actually noticing, when she pauses before she says something, which usually means what she is about to say costs her something. It is staying with a difficult topic instead of steering toward resolution before the discomfort has been fully acknowledged. It is asking a question not because you want information, but because you genuinely want to understand the thing she is trying to say. It is the difference between listening in order to respond and listening in order to receive. Of course, this is easier to describe than to practice. Most men are not failing at this because they lack the capacity. They are failing at it because their attention has been trained toward achievement and output, toward results. And being present without a concrete result to aim for can feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. That discomfort is not a character flaw. It is a learned orientation. And like any learned orientation, it can be redirected. The shift does not need to be dramatic. Small, consistent moments of genuine presence accumulate into something a woman can feel, into a relationship that carries a specific quality of safety she will not walk away from easily. Not because she has decided to stay, because the feeling of leaving something that rare is not a feeling most people can sustain. Which brings us to the only thing left worth saying, and it is the part that will either change how you move through every relationship you have from this point forward, or it will not. That depends entirely on what you do with it. When you stop trying to earn loyalty through everything you do, and start understanding what it actually responds to, something changes in how you show up. Not dramatically, quietly, but the difference is felt immediately by the woman across from you. Everything covered in this video comes back to a single, honest observation. Loyalty in a woman is not a reward. It is a response. It does not follow the man who worked hardest or gave most generously, or was most reliably present in the practical sense. It follows the man who created a specific feeling, consistently, without agenda, without needing it acknowledged, that made her feel more fully herself in his presence than she felt anywhere else. That is not a small thing to offer. It requires a man to have a genuine relationship with his own interior life, to be present enough with himself that he can be present with her. And most men have never been taught that this is part of what a relationship asks of them, which is why so many men who genuinely tried still ended up watching something they valued quietly disappear. You do not need to overhaul who you are. You do not need to become more expressive or more open in ways that feel foreign. What you need is simpler and more specific than that. The redirection of attention you already have toward what actually matters in the moments that count. Has there been a moment in a relationship where you gave everything you had, and still felt her pulling away? Tell me what that looked like in the comments. I read every one, and those answers consistently illuminate something that no framework can fully capture on its own. This channel exists for men who want to understand what is actually happening beneath the surface of female behavior. Not simplified, not softened, but explained honestly and with real psychological depth. If that is what you are here for, subscribe and stay with us. In the next video, I am going to explain something that will make this even clearer. Why a woman can deeply appreciate a man, genuinely care about him, and still leave. And what the gap between appreciation and loyalty tells you about the one thing she actually needed that she never received.